are going to be playing with making these patchwork bracelets and pendants. Kind of stumbled across this. I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and while we were talking, I had some scraps of just scrap ribbon and fabric that was in a little neat little pile because I hate to throw this stuff out. And while we were talking, I just started laying the little squares out into like a little rectangle, and I thought, wow, this would be really cool. We could make little crazy quilt, jewelry or whatever. And so that's where the idea sprang from. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. But I'm going to show you how we do this. I'm sure all of you have little scrap pieces of fabric, just ribbon, stuff that it's little, it's tiny, you don't want to throw it out because it's cool. And that's exactly what this is. It's just a scrap pile of just odds and ends that I have laying around. Even lace works really well too. And so in this case, we are going to be making a bracelet and or a pendant, just to give you an idea of where to start or what we can make. You could do anything with this. It's just kind of a fun little project. And basically what I did is I start out with, and I took pictures of these, so make sure that when you have your components laid out, it's a good idea to take a picture just so you don't forget how you kind of laid them out. But basically, this is just a piece of stiff stuff. So if you're familiar with bead embroidery, this is something, I don't normally use this. I use Ultra Suede as my foundation. And the first two pieces that I made, this one here and the other one, I started out using just cardboard stock or postcard stock. And you might see that in a part of this video here. And it works great. It's really stiff, but it's also really, really hard on your fingers. My fingers are raw from going through the cardboard. So I decided, why not let's use something that's a little bit thinner and easier to sew through. So this is just going to be your foundation. So you want to cut this piece of stiff stuff, and you could use felt, you could even use Ultra Suede. You could use, any number of things, but stiff stuff, I'm going to try it out on stiff stuff. It's easy to find. And basically this is the bracelet. So I'm going to take these apart too. Like I said, I did take a picture of this so I remember how to put them back together. So you're just going to take these and just start taking components that you have and laying them down on your little square here or your little rectangle and playing with placement, where you think it might look good or where it might not look good. And it's okay if the fabric goes off a little bit, because what we're going to do once these are all glued, we're going to trim that excess suede off of the back. So that we're going to do that on both of these. So now I recommend using super thick tacky glue. Now, if you don't have super thick tacky glue, you can certainly use just tacky glue, but you'd want a nice white glue. I wouldn't use E6000 or any of those glues. This is a really nice glue for just gluing fabric. And that's basically what we're doing. So now I'll use a toothpick to spread my glue. And I am going to get my iPad because I did take a picture, so I know how these are going to go back together here. So let me go to my photographs and pull that up. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to start with, and see, I had that all wrong. Here I thought I had it all right. I'm going to start with this bottom piece. And basically, the other thing you want to do, and I should explain this, is it's good to, like, if you have a edge that has a little bit of loose threads, either pull the loose threads out, or you can just use a lighter and just kind of singe the edge. Now be careful here. I don't want you to get burned. I don't want you to burn your house down or anything like that. I don't want to be responsible for that. But this is just going to kind of help those little ends from fraying any more than they already are. And you don't have to go crazy with a lighter, or you could use fray check, something like that works too. So I'm going to just put some glue, and like I said, I use a toothpick to spread my glue. It just makes it easier and cleaner. Okay, I know This little thing is going to go right down here in this corner. And we're going to stitch all these together, but this is just going to get us going here. Okay, then I'm going to glue this little one up in the opposite corner. And you can overlap these sometimes, you know, just play with it. That's the fun part, is sometimes one piece will fit over another piece better, you know. So, you know, you just got to kind of play with it. Oh, there goes my picture. Okay, actually, this goes like that. And if something, like I said, if it extends past, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And then I'm going to put this one in place next. And, you know, it might take you a while to get the right pattern. I mean, that's why I didn't really show you too much about laying it out, because I probably spent a good 15, 20 minutes just trying to figure out how to lay these out properly, how I wanted them to look. So take your time with it. Enjoy the process. I'm going to put it like this. And that's going to go over like this. And don't worry so much about the lines being straight. I mean, it all depends on what you're trying to look, how you want it to look. So, okay, then this little guy goes, oops, little guy goes, looks like over here. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that if there's a little edge where, you know, you can still see some of the background along the edge, don't worry about that too much. And I'm going to explain that here in a minute. Let me just get this one piece in place. And this one's going to go right on top like that. Okay, let me wipe up this little glue so it doesn't get... This is my glue board, and if any of you have taken classes with me before, you'll know that I just use a old piece of cardboard kind of where I glue on. That way it's not going to get on my beading background. So that's what this piece of cardboard is. My picture keeps on going away. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this one up and just make that a little bit better. So now what I want to do is turn this around. Now you should probably wait until the glue dries, but for video purposes, I'm going to go ahead and just speed this up. We're going to cut all this excess off because we want it true to size. Okay, and you might want to clean your scissors too, unless you wait till the glue dries like I should be. But what I wanted to show you is on this pendant, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting a suede backing on the back of this. And that suede backing is going to go flipped over and around this edges. So it's going to seal in any of this fraying that might be happening. So by taking that ultra suede and folding it over like I did here all the way around, we don't have to worry about those edges fraying. So what my point being is, if you have a little space along the edge, don't worry too much because the suede is going to cover it up. And the other thing too is to keep in mind, if it is going to, you know, it's probably going to be like 1/8 of an inch around here. So if there's a specific design that you kind of like, you know, take that into consideration, that it's going to be covered along the edge here. So if there's something that you don't want to cover, you know, maybe keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how I can do on the larger one here. See, I got to try and figure out what I put down first. Okay, so I think I'm going to start down here. And this is a little piece of ultra suede. It's made by Lily Pilly Designs. They put these beautiful patterns on the ultra suede. And Lily Pilly, you can get it at lilypilly.com if you're interested. Here is, we're going to start this one up at the top. And again, I should probably be keeping an eye on my edges, make sure if I have any fray stuff that I can get it with lighter because it's easier to do it before you glue it. So let me do that after I put this piece in place. I'll go around and once again check all of my ends here. So this looks like it just goes all the way there. Get that. Let me see how these are all. This one has a little bit. And you're just running the lighter over real quick. It's like, and if there are any loose pieces, the lighter will just kind of singe them back. That one doesn't look so bad. All right, so the next thing I think is I put this little piece on the top. Anyway, this is just a great way to use up scraps, and it's a lot of fun, and they look really cool. So goes right like this. Okay, and then this green one. Let's see, which side do I want to show, because each one is a little bit different. One side is different than the other. This is all silk ribbon. You can use any kind of ribbon. You can use anything you have. So, you know, you can use fabric, anything you got. Okay, that is going to go right here. I wanted it to be a little bit more square. So, you know, keep that into mind. Do you want your, you know, components to be square? Does it, you could even do them on a curve. Doesn't really matter. I know this is going to go here. And I have one more piece left to do. This one's going to go right here. And I see some little pieces there. Okay, so that's like that. And this one goes, believe it or not, all the way down on the bottom here. I think, just wondering which side do I think I'll use the brighter side on the top. And, uh-oh, I bent that over. Come on, glue. I have a long something there that's pulling on me. And just gonna put it like just like that. So there is a little bit of a wave there, but hey, you know what? That's the way that it glued down, so I'm just gonna leave it. That's the way it wanted to go. Oh, here's my, that's what I was pulling. Okay, so this is all glued. Now let's go ahead and turn it around. And I'm gonna cut all the excess off. Don't use your good scissors. Use a pair of crappy scissors to do this job. Okay, so this is going to be our bracelet. And this will be the pendant. So that was kind of fun, right? So let's take a moment and talk about what are we going to put on these. I like to use the vintage buttons. So these are, you know, I just turn on the back. There's a shank on the back. Just clip them off with wire cutters. And just start collecting things like, I mean, cabochons would work. Natural stone cabochons. These are vintage Montes. This is some crystal chain, cup chain that works really good. Just little stones, anything that you have lying around. And kind of just start playing. I like this one is a really kind of crazy corner with a lot of different angles on there. So I'm just going to cover that up, make it a little bit easier on myself. Again, keep in mind that we are going to put a ledge around these, you know, like 1/8 of an inch of ultra suede. So you want to try and keep your components in a little bit, because you don't want to glue this here, because then when we put our ledge or our edge along here with the ultra suede, this is going to interfere. So make sure you keep that in mind. Like this one here, I should probably move over a little bit, because on some of these larger stones, buttons and such, I'm going to be beading around them, bezeling around them, and I'll show you how to do that in the next step. So this is kind of where I'm at with what I think I'm going to do. So like I said, when I mix up my glue, I like to use, this is my go-to glue. It's epoxy adhesive. It's a 3M product. It's 110, DP 110 translucent. And it's a two-part epoxy. It dries in like 5 minutes workably. It takes like 24 hours for it to dry completely, but you can work with the object. I really like this glue. The gun actually costs more than the glue. And you can go to your local hardware store and get a two-part epoxy there too as well. You don't have to use this glue. This is just what I like to use. I've been using it for decades now. The other thing you can also use is E6000. E6000 it works, and you can find this pretty easily. So you don't want to use the tacky glue when you're gluing cabochons and stones in place. It's not going to hold it. So you have to get out the nasty glue. Okay, so I like to put all of my glue on a separate piece of cardboard that I just have scraps, and I like to mix it there with my toothpick, because I'm using my toothpick to place on the components. And sometimes it helps even to place the components, especially really small ones. So I'm going to just mix this two-part epoxy up really good. And I'm kind of have an idea of where I want my components to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick them up. Now this button has a lot of little clear holes in it. So some of that, the nice thing about this epoxy is it does dry clear. So even if some of that glue presses through some of those holes on this button, it's not going to hurt it, because it's clear and you won't even really notice. So I'm just going to stick that there, kind of pressing down a little bit, make sure it's got a good bond. And then let's move to this larger one here. This is another really cool old button. I love old vintage buttons. They just, you can't find them anymore. A lot of people think if they collect buttons that it's not a very good thing to take the vintage buttons and use them, but I'm like, I'd rather put them in my art and let them be seen than sitting in somebody's collection in a box someplace. That's kind of how I feel about using vintage buttons. It's like, take those hanks off the back and use them. So that one's going to go there. Now this is a vintage Monty, just stone, but basically it has two little places in the back where you can stitch it down, which I'll probably do as well, but I'm also going to glue it down just because I want to get all those ends to be nice and secure to the piece. And sometimes when I glue them down, I actually mess up and glue the holes, so I can't stitch them down. So make sure you get a good glue job on there. So we're going to just press that down. Now here's this is another one that I cut the back off on. These are all vintage, but they don't, there's a ton of components out there. You probably have a stash of components and just fun little things that you can glue to the top of this, and that will be really fun to bead around and just have on your piece. Now, if you have any excess glue, that this one has a little bit over here, I just take my toothpick and kind of go around and clean that glue up. Because once this glue dries, it's not easy to get off. So you better if you want to do any cleaning, do it now. Now here's a really tiny little cabochon, and these are kind of hard to hold in place, like, because they just do that kind of stuff, bounce around. So let me just show you one technique I have, and that is to put the glue on the back and then use your toothpick to actually move it into place. I should probably be putting that cup chain down first to make my life easier, but at this point I am just moving along with the flow here. Cleaning up that excess glue, making sure that, this is going to be out of the way when I put my edging around. And now let's glue this one in place. Now this again is another Monty, meaning that it has places in the back where I can sew it down, but I kind of like to just glue and sew, especially on a bracelet. A bracelet is something that gets worn a lot, and sometimes when you're taking on and off a jacket and stuff. So I really like to make sure that my all of that stuff is secure in place. Now, what I want to do here is I'm going to take this crystal chain and glue it, and I'm going to extend it all the way up too. So this chain kind of stretches, kind of goes like an accordion. So I always stretch it out because we're also going to stitch this down. So, and I also want to leave an edge around there. So I'm almost thinking I might actually take one of those little crystals off, just because I think it's going to interfere, because I also want to glue. Maybe I could move this up a little bit. I'm also going to be stitching a row of beads around this button, so I don't want it to interfere with either of those things. Okay, so how I glue my cup chain down is I kind of get an idea of where it's going to be, and then I just take my toothpick and put a line of glue all the way along. And you don't want to get sloppy here. You don't want to have too much glue that it's going to be squirting out, and then it makes it difficult to stitch those little in between the change as well. So just be kind of conscious here of how much glue you're using and making sure that it's not too much, but also enough that it's actually going to hold the chain in place. And like I said, we are going to be also stitching it down. So, okay, so now I'm just going to place that chain right on top. And it looks like I need to move it over a little bit because I don't want it to interfere with that seam, like I said. And now I'm kind of breaking this up because there isn't really anything up here, but there isn't a seam up here, but I kind of liked the look of having this go all the way up. So I'm kind of breaking up this solid piece of fabric here. And it's okay to do that, right? Just have a little fun here, experiment around. Now I know I'm probably going to have to mix up some more glue. So let me just get this one more little stone in place. And this again is another one that has holes in it, so I'm going to be also stitching that down. Okay, now let me get another card and toothpick, and let's mix some more of this glue up because I ran out. The only way to clean up the epoxy, if you get some on you or someplace that you need to remove it, is with rubbing alcohol. So you do have to be a little bit careful with it. If you get it on your fingers, get it off, because otherwise everything you touch is going to get that glue on there and it's going to just be a sticky mess. So you do have to be a little bit more careful if you're using two-part epoxy. Whereas E6000, if it's much easier. It kind of just pulls right up. If you need to clean it off, it's easy. But once it dries, it's really hard to clean. But it's much easier to keep your things cleaner, I guess I'm trying to say, with the glue. If it does get on your fingers or something like that, it's much easier to remove than the epoxy. So do keep that in mind. I've been using this two-part epoxy before E6000 ever came around, so I'm kind of like, I don't know, if it works, why change, right? That's why I'm still using Nymo thread in my 12 sharp needles, even though there's a ton of different threads out there these days from when I first started. So, but I'm just, it works for me, so there's no need for me to change, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I didn't have all those choices 45 years ago. Now this one, I'm just going to pick up with my fingers. It seems to be letting me do that, and I'll just glue that right there. I think I'm going to get this chain in first and then glue that button. And the same technique here, I'm stretching it all the way across. So I am going to just make a nice generous line with my toothpick, kind of just pulling that glue along. And spreading it out hopefully evenly. Okay, and this is also going to get stitched down, so you know, if you didn't do a super good job on gluing, don't sweat it. And this is another one where I'm contemplating whether, and I think I will, probably just cut that last little one off, because I can kind of have this feeling that it's going to just be in the way of that line that's going to go around. Okay, so now let's glue on our last button, and then we'll let the glue dry for about 5-10 minutes, and then I can start showing you how I do some of the stitching. And these two pieces I did do on the stiff stuff, so not on the cardboard. The cardboard, I'm done with all the pieces I did with the cardboard. It was a lot harder to stitch through, so I'm going to show you how to stitch through the easy stuff. And as you can see, this button's right snug up against there, which isn't exactly what I wanted, but it's okay. It's going to work because I can't change it now, and it's all going to be fine. So we're going to let that glue dry, and then I'll be back. Okay, so we got our components glued in place, and now I'm going to start stitching around them. And what's nice with this stiff stuff, it's a lot easier than the cardboard. So what I do is I'm going to just use my normal, I use Nymo B thread, and I use just a size 12 sharp needle. Nothing fancy. These are size 9 cut beads, and these are size 15, but use whatever you have and whatever you like as far as thread, needle, and all that. I'm just going to show you the basic back stitch. So basically, you start with 4 beads, and this can change. A lot of times I use 6, but for this, I'm going to just use 4. You just lay that row down around your component. So a lot of you already know this back stitch, but for those of you that are just starting out, I'll show you how to do the simple back stitch. And sometimes knots happen and then things happen, but all right, there it goes. So you're pulling that row nice now around your stone or whatever it is you're working at. In this case, it's a button. And then you're going back through the middle and last bead. So this would be, I'm going back through the last 2 beads. So my needle comes up in between those. So let's do that again. So this time I'm going to add again another 4 beads. And sometimes these 9s, they, you know, I've been using them for decades, but all of a sudden now, the holes are smaller. It's really frustrating. Oh no, I think it was that one. And so it's been kind of frustrating using them anymore. They used to be so simple. But in that case, you have to take the bead off, so your needle doesn't fit through it. Or use a smaller needle. Okay. And your threads will get stuck around all of these components that we glued in. So that's just part of the process of patience. So again, my needle's coming up in between those last 2 beads. The third, it would be the second and the third bead, and then I'm going out the last 2. And we're going to do this same process all the way around. It's much easier when you're working just on a flat piece, you know, of suede or stiff stuff. And when you start adding components and fabric and stuff like that, it makes it a little bit more, you know, challenging, but it's still doable. So don't get too frustrated, especially if you're a beginner to this. You know, you might want to start out on just beating around some cabochons that you have glued to just ultra suede instead of a crazy quilt thing here. But anyway, this is much easier than going through the cardboard like I did in the beginning. So I'm glad I figured that out. So now if you wanted to try doing more beads, let's try with 6 this time. So we'll go with 6 beads. It goes a little bit faster. I think sometimes it even looks a little bit smoother but we're still going down at the end of that row. But this time we're going to come up between the third and fourth bead and out the last three. So the only thing that changes really is where your needle's going to come back up. So we're going to go ahead and put 6 beads on again. And go just wrap it around the button. And we're going back through the middle again. You want to really try to keep the thread when you come up. It's better to keep it a little bit north than rather south, because if you keep it too far this way, it'll pull the beads apart a little bit, which I'm thinking that's kind of where I'm at. So, well, let's see how it looks. It does have a way of separating them a little bit. We'll see. We'll see how bad I did. Oh, it doesn't look bad at all. Okay, now you'll see there's just a space for 1 bead there. Sometimes there might be a space for, 3 or 4 more beads. If it's more than 4 beads, I would go down and come back up through the middle. But if it's less, then I would just go ahead and just add that row. So for me, I'm just going to add that extra bead. And then what we want to do is we want to take our needle and go back through that whole row all the way around. We're not going back down through the fabric or the foundation. We're just going back through the row of beads. And what that does is it just pulls all those beads nice and happy and tight all around this cabochon, or button, I should call it, or cab, but whatever it is you're beading around. Sometimes, like I said, these size 9s sometimes are a little bit small, so I'm having to get my pliers there just to help me pull it through. Okay, so we made it around. This time I'm going to come over and tack down this little Monty, because there are holes in there, so I don't have to, but because I did glue it, but I'm going to really reinforce it because this is a bracelet. And bracelets get a lot of, they're hard because, we're putting on jackets and coats and you want them to be durable. So I'm going to tack it down, and we're also going to put a row of beads around it. And we're going to use the size 15s this time. So again, we're coming right next to the bead. I'm just going to use 4 because usually when I go around smaller spaces like that, I'll shoot down just to 4 beads instead of the 6. So I'm over in this area, and I'm going to go ahead and just tack down this crystal cup chain. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in right in the middle of those 2 crystals, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of spread them apart a little bit, make sure that that thread goes in between, and I'm going to tack down in between each one of these crystals, just because I want to make sure that they stay down. I mean, I did glue them, but I also want to just make sure that they're not going to go anywhere. So I went ahead and stitched around all the little components and added a little texture back here on this piece here with just some small 15. So I've got this assortment here, some different beads and some different colors that are kind of complementing. So what I want to do is just bring a little color up into this area. And this is where I'm kind of like just using the beads to kind of cover up these seams as the best way to describe it. So I'm just going to lay this down, and you can see the blue and how pretty that is, and it's just popping. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple rows of the blue over the seam here just to kind of cover it up. Not only is it going to help keep that seam nice and tight, but it's just adding that crazy quilt kind of feel to it. So I wanted to show you how I'm going to finish this pendant. Now this is one that I stitched. This is one that I glued on the cardboard, and it's a little bit stiffer. So if you were using the stiff stuff and you want your piece, or if you used ultrasound felt and you want your piece to be a little bit more sturdy, I would just cut a piece of, this is just what I send my postcards on. So it's postcard stock. I would just cut some of that and glue it on the back, and that will help keep your piece a little bit more straight, especially if you're making a pendant. You don't want it to be floppy and wobbly. But since this piece already has the cardboard on it, then I don't have to worry about it. So what I did is I cut a piece of ultra suede that's a little bit bigger, because what's going to happen is these are going to be go over and around. And I would say I'm cutting it probably about 1/4 of an inch larger on all four corners. Now I did leave it a little bit longer on the top because I'm going to use, this is just guitar string. And if you've taken any of my Secrets Revealed classes, I think I talk about this in my first one. This is just guitar string. So it's hollow on the inside. It's like a spring. And that's really good because I can lay that there and glue it around and then cut the spring off. And then I have this channel that I can string on. So I'll be able to string a chain around this. So I want to leave a little bit more probably on the top side on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue this down using again, I'm just using tacky glue because that's all I need. I don't need to use any of the toxic E6000s or epoxies or anything, because this works just perfectly. It actually works really much better on fabric and stuff like that. So I am going to just try to get it as centered, although I want it to be a little bit longer on the top, just so that that guitar string will fit through there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put some glue along the edge here. We don't want to go crazy. I mean, we don't want a bunch of glue squirting all over the place, but we also want enough that we're going to have a good bond. So something like that. And then we're just going to take this and fold it over. And that's going to keep all the fraying from happening. So I'm just going to clean that up so that the nice thing about the tacky glue is it does dry clear, so you won't even see it. But I just kind of like to, and if any of the glue got on the ultra suede, it cleans up real easy with just a wet Q-tip. Okay, so now let's go ahead, and maybe I should use a little bit less glue on this side because that was squirting out a little bit more than I cared for it to. So this will go on the other side. I mean, you do want enough glue that it's going to actually adhere. So we're just folding that over, making sure it's nice and happy. And this is where, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we start sewing. See, and you could see where it's good that you leave enough room where you have beads or something there, so that it doesn't, so that when you fold this over, you don't have to deal with the bead there, because otherwise it's going to mess up how that seam is going to be nice there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my scissors and I'm just going to open up this little part here. I could do this ahead of time, but I find it works just as easy to do it now. And I'm just going to take that little square out so that when I fold this over, it's not going to interfere with my folding over. I mean, I could probably fold it over just easily with that there, but it's going to make it a little bit bulky, and I want it to be a nice clean fold. And these are going to get all stitched anyway around. We're going to do an edging on this, so I'm not too worried about that. And then this will get folded. I'm just going to do it like this. I'm kind of just going to bend it like that. And if you have a seam that's kind of it's not really gluing or cooperating, you can use like a clothespin or some kind of a clamp to just, clamp over this to make sure that it stays where you want it to be. But I find that the tacky glue really, actually, it works really well. And you'll find that if you need to undo it, it's really hard to pull it apart. So don't worry too much about whether or not it's going to hold. It will hold. Okay, now that I'm going to do the same thing up here, I'm just going to put a slit here and open this up and just cut that. That's the nice thing about ultra suede is that it doesn't fray. So it's kind of like felt in that way that, so if I cut this, I don't have to worry that it's going to fray. I need to get rid of these little dots though because they keep sticking to my fingers. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put my glue there. And then I'm going to just take my guitar string and I'm just going to put it right there. And then this is just going to get folded over like so. And so what'll happen is I'll go ahead and I can do this right now is I'm going to just clip these. And then when I want to string this, I have this hollow hole cord going through that I can just put my stringing material through and it'll be a nice clean finish. So now you can go around with a Q-tip and just clean off any of the suede, or yeah, clean the suede up of any glue that might be on there. Make sure everything's really nice and happy. And then we have so we're going to go ahead and edge this. It'll be something similar to this. We're going to put a simple edging around it. You can put the simple edging all the way around. You can have fun with this. Do whatever you want. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. But then we have a really nice finished back, and we can add things to hang on the bottom. So it's kind of a lot of fun, right? Now I wanted to just show you too. This is one way that you can do it with just a piece of bracelet. This is just strapping material, leather strapping. I get this I think it's antelope beads. They have really nice magnetic clasp, and they have really nice, leather cording that you can use for bracelets. So this is a real easy bracelet. What I did on this case is I took my ultra suede, okay, and I went ahead and cut it so that it's got the 1/4 inch on either side. And then this is going to fold over. What I did here is I cut a little cord there. So I cut a little opening in there with an X-Acto knife so that this will fit through like so. I cut it a little bit bigger than the cording, but see this, so in this case, what's going to happen, actually it's going to go like this. I have to see, what am I doing? Actually, you're right. This does turn around so that the good side is like so. And then what we're going to do is going to glue this on top, and then we'll fold our leather over. So what I want to do first, I think, is I'm going to put just some glue. I guess I could probably do it this way. I just don't want to get glue all over everything. But I do want to make sure that this is glued down nicely. And then this will go in through this slit that I had. Get this glue out of there. And pull this down to where it needs to go. There we go. something like that. I want it to be even. And I'm just going to try to get the glue off of there so it doesn't cause any problems. So that's basically how that is going. I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on this leather strapping. And I'm going to put glue on the back of this piece. Now this piece, again, this is cardboard, so it's a little bit stiffer. If you were to use, you know, the stiff stuff, it won't be quite as rigid. It'll be a little bit more flexible. So if you want the rigidness, you could add cardboard if you want it to be a little bit more stiff. So this is going to just get glued right on top. And we're going to try and center that as best as we can. Now in this case, I am going to let this glue dry for a little bit before I go to attempt curving it over. I just want to make sure that this is going to stay in place and be nice and happy. Now I used brown suede, but you can see the difference if you used black. I like black it's beautiful. Black really makes it pop, I think, more so. But I just wanted to show you that you can use other colors. It doesn't have to be black. You could use whatever color ultra suede you have. And then you got your edges, which are going to turn over really nice. Now here, this one, you can see it's a little bit longer, so it's going to go over that last little bit of beadwork there. So I have an option. I can either trim this, which I probably will do, or I could get rid of the bead, but I think I might trim it. This side, it looks pretty good. I don't think I'm running into anything. Here, I'm running into a little bit of this crystal chain there, but I don't think it's enough that it's going to be an interference. I think we're good everywhere else. So let's just go ahead and let this glue dry. Okay, so we got our suede around our piece, and let's go ahead and start working on some edging. Now I use what I call the simple edging, and those of you who have taken my class before know the simple edging, but for those of you that haven't, I'll just go over it real quick. So usually in bead embroidery, you have a foundation and you have a backing, and you can hide your needle in between, which we don't have that here because this is folded over, but there is little places where we can still stick our needle in. And what that does is it hides your knot. So I'm just going to grab that again and just make sure that we got a good starting point. And then for the simple edging, it's kind of similar to a picot edging, only instead we start with 4 beads rather than 3. And then we move down about 2 bead spaces. And again, we're kind of just grabbing a hunk of that suede. Just like, normally if you had a foundation and a backing, you would be, kind of bringing those 2 pieces, the backing and the foundation, together and stitching them together. Well, here we don't really have that because, like I said, we folded it, but it's the same principle. So we started with 4, now we're going to go down to 3. And again, we're just spacing it a couple bead spaces. So think of 2 size 15s. Okay, so got our spacing. Let me tell you the next important thing, which I kind of totally blacked out. We're going up. And then what we want to do is we want to take our needle and go through the bottom. Make sure it's the bottom of that last bead that you have on there. So picking up 3, going down a couple bead spaces, and then your needle comes up through the bottom of that last bead. A lot of people make the mistake and they go through the top. And that'll work, but it kind of gives it a twist. So 3 bead spaces up through the bottom. So 3 beads, spacing at about 2 beads apart, and up through the bottom. And for me, this is just, I love edging. It's kind of like this finishing, you get to see the piece finished, and it's just coming to life. So once you've made it all the way around and you're right back to where you started, what we're going to do is you're going to pick up 2 or 3 beads. It depends on the spacing. I think here I could probably get away. I might be able to get away with 2, but let's see. I'm going to do 3. So what we're going to do this time is I got my 3 beads on, and I'm going to go down through the top and bring my needle back out back of that first bead that we put on, and that's how you're going to finish it. And I could probably go down one. It seems a little bulky, so what I do, if I have an extra bead and it's kind of too bulky, I just use some crimper and I just pop that bead off. So now it's a little better. So my needle is coming out the back now. I'm going to bring it in a little bit just so it's not so close to the edge. And I'm going to go ahead and do my looping over twice, pulling that all the way down, holding down with my thumb, pulling out. That's how I knot. So you're going around the thread and then just pulling it as close to the suede as you can, holding it with your thumb now. And then I'll take my needle and go right next to that knot and push it down, maybe a quarter of an inch or so into the suede, and just pull my needle out. And then that is where I will trim it. So now we have this edged, beautiful bracelet. And again, you can work the cardboard. If you have cardboard in there, you can work it to make it more of a smooth cuff, which in time, it's gonna come right, it's gonna fit to your wrist or your customer's wrist is how it looks. So it's a really cool, easy way to finish off any kind of beadwork, but in this case we were talking about our Crazy Quilt cuffs, which I think turned out pretty